Hey everyone, so Victory Bells has been out for over a week now, and I thought I would give some of my thoughts and opinions on the launch of the game, as well as the game itself. So here we go. So I was following this game since its Kickstarter all the way back in 2016, and participated in the Kickstarter support beta in 2021, which kicked off the creation of this channel, where I took things from the beta to show off, like the bell voices and some scuff story readings to kind of start getting some content out there before the release of the game. So you could say that I have been playing this game for about 2 years now, times when I was locked out of the beta for breaking the game notwithstanding. Now for those new here, Victory Bells is a World War II naval combat game with a ship girl aesthetic on top. Germany has begun its invasion of Poland, and at the same time strange monsters mimicking the appearance of naval vessels have shown up all over the world, attacking ports and coastal towns. As a counter, bells, the physical and spiritual manifestation of naval vessels, have awoken and begun to aid all the nations in a united front against the indiscriminate threat. Speaking of the bells, the designs are more inspired by the name and history of the bell rather than going with a more sexualized approach, which I'm personally more fond of. But the more temptress and lewdish designs are kind of left with the Morganas, your enemies in the game, even if Sin has been forced to wear spats. Each bell will also speak its native language rather than sticking with a specific dub. The devs went through the effort to try and localize each individual bell, and even with the more English speaking bells having specific accents depending on what region the English speaking bell is from. But as of recording this, not all of the bells have their voice lines in the game yet. This is really prevalent with some of the French bells, as only 6 of them have their voices recorded at this time, which is definitely something that devs will be working on later down the line, releasing new voices for bells. Now, rather than going an RPG approach to combat, the devs have taken all the data they could get from learning about the real-life World War II ships to try and create an accurate simulation of naval battles. This does mean the learning curve can be quite high as you try to learn every detail about combat, from your weapon stats to fleet compositions to map navigation and what weather nodes do, as well as reading the ranges in combat and what is actually happening in the fight as it's being simulated. But you can get by at the start of the game by throwing your bells at battle after battle to collect more vestures to rescue more bells and level them up by completing more sorties, or promoting them with vestures which also give XP and stat boost depending on the vesture. The bell's specific vestures that were used to rescue them also would give a ×2 boost, as well as holding stats that are of specific value to that bell. For example, a bell focusing on aircraft and airstrikes will normally have vestures that improve those stats. With the fights being simulated, the game can become repetitive with its core gameplay loop as you run the same sortie to collect vestures for bells of interest for a specific map, which can lead to a lot of grinding, especially at later levels when you're trying to collect vestures for battleships and battle cruisers. Those bells can take a lot of vestures to rescue them, which means you'll be running the same map over and over again and relying on RNG of getting that vesture from the loot pool, which will also contain bells for like destroyers and light cruisers, and just getting spooked by other vestures while you're trying to collect a battleship's vestures can be really off-putting at times, even though we have a system like the Rose system, which will increase the chance of getting a specific bell's vestures, even on maps where that bell isn't a bell of interest, which can assist the grind, but it still doesn't change the fact that it's a very low percentage. There are also limited time event bells who will appear on certain maps and provide their vestures, as well as appearing in the store for players with more money than time. And it's also not so much a gacha system, it has a limited supply loot box. So eventually you will just deplete that loot box and get the bell you're wanting. But I would definitely say that grinding is better than spending in this case, because with my pace of play I managed to get both of the event bells that came out on release, Pensacola and Ashigara, about 2 days each. It took me to grind for them, around 120 to 150 runs of a map over and over again to get all of their vestures and rescue them. And now that I have them rescued, I can just rose them for their specific vestures, which is definitely a lot easier on my wallet than it would be if I was to spend in-game currency or prestige on getting the bells and hoping I get lucky and getting them early, or actually having to deplete the box, which can become incredibly depressing at times. At least it guarantees the bell. Outside of the combat loop, we have a detailed R&D system which we can dismantle equipment and work out the gremlins and kinks of them. to either begin mass producing or to equip and experiment. It's definitely more of a tool for the later game, unless you're willing to pay prestige, the in-game currency, to unlock some of the berths a lot earlier, rather than unlocking them as you level. You also have the option to rush R&D in production if you think that the timer is too long and are willing to pay the prestige, but in my honest opinion, stay away from that. The prestige cost and time, and the fact that certain R&Ds will go up like 0.1%, 0.2%, which means you could be spending money for a minuscule increase in R&D. Prestige on R&D and production is not worth it. Yeah, to be honest, there shouldn't even be an option to spend prestige on rushing. I personally think that diplomacy, the currency that you gain from running maps, should be used instead of prestige. Now, moving on to one of the main selling points of the game, the story for the overall War of the Morganas and each individual Belle stories are a high point for me personally, as learning and interacting with each Belle's personality and their thoughts on the ground war that is still going on bring many different viewpoints to the table. It doesn't shy away from the idea that some Bells may agree with their nation's standing in the war, as well as trust in their nation's system. Some of the Bell stories are definitely stronger than others, as you could be talking to a Soviet Union Belle who has a strong sense of pride in her nation, but also a sense of fear and paranoia of being renamed and the fate of her previous namesake. Or you could be working with a Belle to stop an international disaster when another captain goes rogue. But then there are times where it just devolves into a naval slice of life kind of thing, where you're just learning about the Belle's personality and some of their traits and quirks. And at the end, you can choose to advance it further with a friendship or romance by paying the in-game currency, which would lead to different dialogue choices, like maybe the Belle will be addressing the captain differently if they're more a romantic partner than a friend, and also the situations where the Belle is alone with the captain may be a bit more intimate. But as of recording, it doesn't branch off into different story arcs. We also have other stories like the League of Nations stories, which is less of a Belle story and more revolving around the captain himself and different crew and passengers. Belle's only really appearing as prestige options to get further equipment. You might have a few dialogue options, and one of them might be something related to the Belle, which would give you a piece of equipment or a crew member, which can be equipped onto a Belle or used in R&D to work out the kings and mass produce them for even more stat boosts. As of recording this, the only crew I have gotten so far have been from the end of game ranking rewards, but that crew member was also broken, so I had to destroy him. The only other crew I have gotten is from these Belle choices in the League of Nations stories. In the beta, we used to get crew and mascots by doing the Belle's Volume 1 and Volume 2 story, but as of recording, I have not received any crew or mascots, only vestures from doing the Belle's story, which is a real disappointment, as it means at this moment in time there is no free-to-play option of getting crew, which are vital to the endgame of Victory Bells, especially for combat with stats like field repair from the engineers and reserves, which affects the Bells' fatigue, meaning how long they can go for in a fight, which at the later levels of Victory Bells and the higher level sorties are detrimental to actually getting an S rank, which is the only real thing that matters in battles, as anything less than an S rank leads to a lot less EXP and also the inability to run cruisers, which are more of the simulated way of getting vestures and supplies without having to repeatedly grind. Now for some ending thoughts of my opinion on the game and its launch, I feel the launch was very weak, which could be due to them actually wanting a soft launch, as the devs were very unsure of when they could release this game, because they were very much just working through beta, hoping that all the bugs would get fixed so they can get the game to a release state, which as one of the beta testers who did have game-breaking bugs that was stopping development and stopping the release of the game, I can understand their viewpoint on that. Although I do believe they could have spent a good 2 or 3 months just getting things ready for an actual ad campaign, getting to talk to like the right people in certain communities to kind of like advertise or see the game for themselves, rather than what they're doing at the moment, which is very much the game is now out. We have the beta testers who have stuck with us for 2 years now. We'll rely on them to get the word of mouth out, go through different communities, see what people we can get. Hopefully they come to the game, they enjoy the game, word of mouth continues to spread, and they're hoping that the game grows slowly by that. A lot of my opinions of it are that's not really going to work the way they think it's going to work. A lot of people might come from the Kansai Collection community and see that this is kind of like a love letter to Kankol and stick around with that. But a lot of the people might be coming from like the Azure Lane community and other Ship Girl games. They might come, they might see how grindy the game is and not really stick with it and leave with a bad taste in their mouth, which isn't going to help them at all with the fact that they're very much going to be reliant on a good first impression and then people sticking around and not leaving as they try and spend time to work out the kinks and make improvements now that there will be more feedback from casual players, players who don't have all the time in the world to just spend grinding non-stop, to give their thoughts and opinions on what could be changed. One thing specifically is that there is a level requirement to progress story, especially in the Volume 2. So Volume 1, you go from level 1 to level 25. That is quite manageable for a early game casual player to get from level 1 to level 5 with a bell, especially now that we can use vegetables to level up bells. But later on, where it goes from level 25 to level 105 for the Volume 2 story, I've been playing the game pretty consistently. I still can't complete a Volume 2 story. And as stories being one of the selling points of the game, and probably going to be one of the main points of income that the game will be getting, as people will be paying prestige to continue the story for their bells, as the romance and friendship bells, that kind of stuff. They've just made a massive wall of grinding and work for people who just want to enjoy the story and are willing to pay for all of the stories to get through. Now, my thoughts for the in-game currency, prestige, and the payment methods for it, I'm going to say look at it yourself and see if that is good for you. You are the master of your own wallet. I'm not going to say how you can and shouldn't spend your money. I'm personally of the case of I know what I shouldn't be spending my money on. I know what I can spend to alleviate some of the issues like buying repair bays, buying R&D bays to get R&D off the bat. Maybe buying some more inventory because you do only have 50 inventory for your bells at the very start of the game, which you will get more of at later levels. But if you are just grinding bells and wanting to collect them all, you will need that inventory. And if you're not getting to the right levels quick enough, you're going to hit a wall where you can't collect or rescue any more bells, and it is going to force you to pay to buy more inventory to progress. So I'm in the personal mindset of I'm probably going to pay for the skins I really like, although some of the skins do seem kind of dated with their artwork, due to them either being what the Bell's original artwork was going to be before they got changes, and also the stuff that was made very early on in the game's development. It is noticeable that certain skins have not aged well, or the art style is not the same standard of later skins that are going to be priced at the same price of 600 prestige as other skins. And then I'm also just going to pay for the stories, which is why I play this game. I really like the stories, I really like the narratives. I also enjoy the core gameplay loop, and at higher levels where your fleet composition and your fleet's equipment really matters, brings quite a bit of challenge at the later levels. And in the end, the only time we'll really tell if the developers are kind of able to clear all of the gremlins out of the game and give us some more quirks and advantages to make the Victory Bells experience even better. I think slight changes to the tutorial or even a compendium of sorts would assist with helping players learn a lot more about the intricacies of the game. There's also issues with the tutorial where you can accidentally just skip what Recruit is telling you, and unable to go back to it, you're kind of just lost. So I think ways of returning to tutorial stuff or tutorial information would be appreciated, rather than us just accidentally skipping and figuring stuff out on our own along the way. Feedback-wise is going to be very much wait and see. We've got a lot of people bringing their own ideas and their own opinions of the game to the board, and it's just going to be a case of what the devs pick and choose what they want to change themselves or what they feel might improve the player experience. I definitely have a lot of interest in how their idea of the flow of the story and what happens in the game is going to be affected by the weekly missions that the players can take part in, where we can decide where we're actually putting our war efforts for our nation. Which is going to be interesting later on along the line, even if it does seem like Italy's just going to take over the world. at this moment in time. We've also got the rest of the 1939 bells waiting to be released, which is going to be fun and exciting. I've seen a lot of bell chibis being teased in the class of 1939 image. I will also be linking the community Discord in the description of the video. It's an ever-growing community, and the Discord is a great place to answer any questions you have about the game, and also share a bunch of history memes, so enjoy. And that's pretty much it. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a like, or even consider subscribing if you want more Victorial Bells content in the future. I am planning on releasing more of my Scuff stories that I upload onto YouTube and also stream on my Twitch channel, which will be linked in the description. I'm also planning on working on some helpful guides to go into the little details that a recruit kind of misses out in her tutorials. Also, the game has permadeath. Okay, bye.